for the wall has something to do with the Second World War. In the Second World War, after the Second World War, Germany was divided into 4 zones. American, British, French, and Soviet Union zone. Each ally, each winning power had its own right in its own zone. Berlin, being the capital of Germany, was divided into 4 sectors. And they wanted to administrate Berlin all together, the 4 powers who had won the Second World War. And Berlin happened to be in the Soviet Union zone. Then in 1948, there started the argument between the Western Allies, the Americans, the British, and the French, against the Soviet Union. Then they blocked the exit roads to the western sectors of Berlin, and Berlin was supplied by the American and British military airlift only. Every 90 seconds an airplane was starting or landing at that time to supply West Berliners. My mother was pregnant with me at that time, and when I wasn't very good at school later on, she went to the teachers at school and always said, "Leave her alone, she is a child of the blockade." That tells you how difficult the time was. Then the blockade was stopped, and people could still move through Berlin from one zone to the other. So people went to Berlin, and then they crossed from the Soviet Union zone to the western sectors, and then they kind of managed through access roads to the western zones in West Germany. Because the living conditions in the western zones were a lot better than the living conditions in the eastern zones. The West was supported by the Marshall Plan, while the Soviet Union even took out the plans from the Soviet Union zone. So living conditions were better, economy picked up faster, and we were living in a democratic system in the West while they had this communistic system in the East. So many Germans from East Germany tried to make it to West Germany. And East Germany lost the young qualified workers, more than 3 million out of 18 million. And they were badly needed in both parts of Germany after the war, because that was the era of reconstruction. We didn't have any workless people, just the opposite. We were inviting from all over Europe people to work here in Germany. So this refugee movement, East Germany couldn't take any longer, and therefore they built this wall. And there was this wall between West Germany, West Berlin where we are at, and East Berlin, the other side of the street. And then there was the wall around West Berlin. And we were in the middle of the territory of the Soviet Union zone. So we had access roads, which we could use as West Berliners. We had air corridors where you could fly. They were 32 kilometers large. You were only allowed to fly 3,000 feet high, 9,000 feet. So it was a very special situation. And to stop East Germans from coming, they didn't only build the wall, but they had a death strip afterwards. Behind there were barbed wires, there were steel boulders, there were watchtowers, there were dogs patrolling and soldiers patrolling. It was a deadly border. And more than 136 people were killed by trying to go from east to west here in Berlin. More than 136. Why don't we know the exact number? Because usually when people were trying to escape, they did this at night. So people in West Berlin, like here, the wall was dividing roads, but these are official buildings. But in some areas, they were dividing roads with houses. So on the western side, they were hearing that something had gone on the border. So there were shootings and light, and the dogs were barking. But they couldn't tell really what had gone on. Was the person able to escape? Was he shot or she shot or injured and then pulled back? Since we have no exact witnesses, we really don't know until today how many people were killed. But we know for sure 136 here in Berlin, we think more. And we know more than 1,000 on the inner German borders. And this war lasted from 61 until November 89. Until GDR, East Germany, was completely bankrupt. And we had glasnost and perestroika in the Soviet Union, so they didn't get any support by the Soviet Union and they had to give up. So that was a very short explanation about the German history. Any questions?